I need to get this episode done. All right, so, all right, we'll get this going here in just a second. Oh, I need to get YouTube going. Where's YouTube? How come I've lost YouTube? Where is YouTube? There's YouTube. Let me open it up. Let's do a search, if I can speak correctly, for Theology Central. All right, get there. We'll get this going here in just a second. I'm going to turn that off. All right. Now I'm going to open up Sermon Audio, which there's about 900 broadcasts currently underway. There's 140 currently. Here we are. Now I'm going to open up Sermon Audio. Got that. All right. So here we go. We'll begin here in just a second, ladies and gentlemen. I hope this goes well. I think it'll go okay. All right, YouTube connection is established. The stream is read successfully and established. Okay, the map is currently working. I greatly appreciate that. People are tuning in. Okay, let's do this. I need to make this quick. I hope I got my links here. I hope so. I hope those links work. If they don't, this is going to get ugly. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I have time to test it now. Ladies and gentlemen, we go live in 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1.
Looking at our world from a theological perspective. This is the Theology Central podcast, making theology central.
Stop everything you're doing. Stop everything you're doing. This is a late issue of the Sermon Audio Daily. I know. It's way late. It's currently 6:19 p.m. Central Time. It is Wednesday, October the 22nd, 2025. I'm coming to you live from do I call it the printing press for the Sermon Audio Daily? Well, it's not really in print. I mean, I've got the sound effects, but it's really an audio thing. It's not, but okay. I'm coming to you from the audio printing press for the Sermon Audio Daily, where I've got to give you today's Sermon Audio Daily edition, the issue of Sermon Audio Daily. Yeah, okay. All the metaphors are falling apart. The point is, this is the series, the Sermon Audio Daily, where I turn on this very microphone in this very studio, in this very town, and I tell you, hey, the Sermon Audio platform, sermonaudio.com, the website, the Sermon Audio app, Sermons by Sermon Audio. Open up that platform, and I'm going to point you to things to listen to things to consider, to pay attention to, so that we can all get the most out of this gigantic sermon archive. Millions of sermons, all right there available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We have a tendency to drive right past, and just think of it in this way, this giant library filled with theological and biblical content, and we have a tendency to drive by it every single day. And we rarely stop, park, and go inside and look and bring something out of great value. So I'm trying to get people to stop their car and go inside the Sermon Audio library and try to say, hey, here's some selections for today. Check these out, and tomorrow you can find something else. So that's what I try to do. I kind of made a mistake today, right? What I should do is the first broadcast of the day should be the Sermon Audio Daily. It really should. But in this particular case, something else was bothering me. And I think it's fair to say at this very moment, I'm somewhat consumed by it. You could say I'm a little obsessed by it, right? I'm kind of obsessive compulsive about the situation because it bothers me greatly. If I'm just being honest with you, this situation we're going to be talking about, it bothers me greatly. It irritates me. It frustrates me. It bothers me because of the things I've been taught in church and was never given good information about this. And even in Bible college and seminary, in many cases, I don't even think this was ever even discussed in an in-depth manner. And that drives me crazy. So when you stumble upon something, you're like, wait a minute, nobody's going to talk about this from the pulpit, from anywhere? Well, I felt like I had no choice, so I talked about it today. I think over an hour, I discussed it. And, well, I said that the only fair thing to do is I gave you my hypotheses. I gave you my criticism. I gave you my critique. The only thing I can do to be fair is, well, in the Sermon Audio Daily, let's go back to that topic, and that verse and that chapter, and let me point you to things that are going to look at it from a completely different perspective, because that's the only fair-minded way to approach this, right? I want to make sure that you get to hear different perspectives. So I'm going to be pointing you to things that clearly I disagree with. Clearly. Now you may say, what are you obsessed about? What's been bothering you? What's going on? Well, if you didn't listen to the broadcast earlier today, I have been greatly bothered. And I've been researching and reading for hours upon hours things about Psalm chapter 22, verse 16. Psalm chapter 22, verse 16 reads, "For dogs have compassed me, the assembly of the wicked have enclosed me. They pierced my hands and my feet." They pierced my hands and my feet. And what many people will do is they'll go to Psalm 22 and say, Psalm 22 is the greatest proof we have that the Bible is inspired by God. Because in Psalm 22, we have the prophecy of the crucifixion of Jesus 1,000 years before there was even crucifixion. And everybody says, amen, ooh, and they all clap and they think it's amazing. And I tend to raise my hand and go, wait a minute. First of all, I don't even know if that's the right way to translate Psalm 22, verse 16. And I think we're making some major assumptions. And I think we have a tendency to be reading back into something that was never intended in the first place. Now, I know the minute I say that, you're like, oh, what? Go listen to what I talked about this morning in our discussion on, I call it the Psalm 22:16 problem. And you can go listen to that. And I'm going to be pointing you to sermons that's going to go probably with what will make you feel more comfortable and what you already agree with. But I want you to hear both. So let me just try to explain. All right. In Psalm chapter 22, verse 16, if you were to look at it in the Masoretic text, the Hebrew text, in a standard Hebrew Bible, it's going to actually be Psalm 22:17, but it's numbered 22:16 in our English Bible. And I could give you the entire Hebrew phrase, but it's going to be, that final phrase is going to basically mean like this. Literally, it's going to be like a lion, my hands and my feet. Like a lion, my hands and my feet. That's how it reads, right? Now, grammatically, just reading it that way seems odd, right? Like a lion, my hands and my feet. The sentence is lacking a verb, right? There doesn't appear to be a verb there. So it could mean, like a lion, they are at my hands and my feet, if we wanted to clean it up some. And this would imply that the lion is then mauling or attacking the individual. The lion is at my hands and my feet, and it's going to tear me apart. It's going to maul me. It's going to attack me. All right. That's the Masoretic text, which is typically the standard text that most Christians would say they use in their Bibles, and many would say that's what we should use. However, we all know that there's the Septuagint, which is the Greek translation of the Hebrew scriptures, right? Now, it would say something like this: they dug my hands and my feet. They dug my hands and my feet. Now, some then take that kind of as an idiom to be like, well, they didn't dig, they pierced the hands and my feet. Yeah, that's what happened. Okay, Psalm 22:16, they pierced. So the Septuagint translators either have read a different Hebrew text or they interpreted like a lion metaphorically as a violent wounding. So like a lion, they dug my hands and my feet. Okay, they pierced. But even dug doesn't really get us to the crucifixion, but okay. But once you get to, then you could go to the Dead Sea Scrolls. There's a fragment that seems to support they dug, but the letters seem to be partially damaged. So many scholars, they They say it could either read like a lion or they dug. The evidence doesn't seem to be decisive, so there's lots of disagreement. So already when you get to Psalm 22:16, even though pastors will stand, this is a prophecy of Jesus, and this proves the inspired word of God, it really is very, very debatable, and how you read it goes, there's a lot of layers to it. And I'm just going through all this quickly, all right? Now, if we get to the Vulgate, the Latin Vulgate follows the Septuagint. They dug, and most English Bibles inherited that rendering through the church's tradition rather than through Hebrew textual certainty. All right? So dug becomes pierced, but it's pierced. This is talking about crucifixion. And I talk about all the possible problems with it, even the context here. If you look at the context of where Psalm 22:16, what comes before and what comes immediately after, is about animals. It's about animals ripping you apart. And of course, this is the genre here is not prophetic. It's poetic. It's poetry. It's describing things in very figurative ways. So then, and it's weird because pastors will preach some of this in a very figurative way, and then others it will say, oh, this is very literal. This is literally talking about being nailed to a cross. And you're like, whoa, wait, how did the verses before become literal and this become figurative and this becomes literal? There's just so many problems here. So that's just covering some of the problems very quickly, all right? The goal here is not to expound all the problems, just to remind you that there are problems. And so I believe any good church, any good pastor, any good Bible teacher is going to take the student and walk you right into the problems so that you know they're there and you struggle with them. And not necessarily just try to give you certainty. Certainty I say this all the time. Certainty is typically the enemy of truth, because many times truth leaves you with a lot of uncertainty. Right? And so I think a good Bible teacher is not afraid to let the student feel that uncertainty and go, well, I just don't get this. So is it the Masoretic text? Is it the Septuagint text? And again, if you go with the Septuagint and Psalm 22:16, then why don't you go with the Septuagint in Jeremiah, was it 17:9, about the heart is desperately wicked and deceitful above all things? Because the Septuagint doesn't read that way. It doesn't say the heart is desperately wicked and deceitful above all things. But no, we go with the Masoretic there. So is this a game where we just get to pick and choose which manuscript we're going to use when it works with our theology? See, there's all kinds of problems here. So what I want to do in this episode, in this edition of the Sermon Audio Daily, as I want to point you to some sermons on Sermon Audio dealing with Psalm 22:16. All right. Now, I was going to put together a lot, but here's what I found. Most of the sermons on Sermon Audio dealing with Psalm 22 or Psalm 22:16, you can tell from a million miles away which direction they're going, right? Just the title will be like the prophecy of the cross or the crucifixion of Jesus, Psalm 22. All of their titles give it away. They're already going clearly in that direction. So I was just curious. So I went to artificial intelligence. I went to AI and I said, hey, I want you to make a prediction. What do you think we would find if we start sampling a whole lot of sermons on Psalm 22? And this is what artificial intelligence says. If you sampled sermons from Sermon Audio, right, or other preaching archives, you'll find that well over 95% of them, AI says that's a conservative estimate, will present Psalm 22:16 as an unquestioned prophecy. David said, they pierced my hands and my feet, and this describes the crucifixion centuries before it existed. So AI is predicting that about 95% of sermons will go that way, and it's saying that's a conservative prediction. It says those sermons will never mention that the Hebrew Masoretic text doesn't say pierced. They will never explain that like a lion is the reading in the entire Jewish textual tradition, and they will rarely, if ever, admit that they are abandoning the Masoretic text in favor of the Septuagint reading. And in many cases, they will almost act like the New Testament writers cited Psalm 22:16, which they did not. Now, I asked AI, so why does this happen? Why would this occur over 95% of the time? And it says there are several forces combined to make the silence almost universal. confessional tradition. Evangelical and Reformed theology inherit a proof text method from 19th century apologetics. Prophecy fulfilled in Christ becomes a mark of biblical authority, so questioning a key proof text feels destabilizing. So, hey, this is the proof text. Don't question it. Just accept it and say, this is fulfilled prophecy. End of story. Don't ever question it. Don't ever challenge it. A translation trust. Most pastors rely on English translations like the KJV, the ESV, the New American Standard, or the NIV. All of these, except a few modern Jewish or critical editions, follow the Septuagint or Dead Sea Scrolls reading they pierced. So the preacher never ever sees the variant. The translation hides the controversy. Well, I hate that. Well, the controversy is hidden. The controversy is hidden is if the pastor won't do 5 minutes of study. No, but they only study what they already agree with. I spent 14 hours studying. You spent 14 hours reading commentaries that already agree with you, okay? Now, if you really dig in, you should become face to face with this controversy. You should immediately go, all right, what do I do here? And one thing you do, you bring that controversy to the pulpit. Now, many pastors would say, no, that could cause people to be confused. If you're not willing to if their faith can't handle being confused, then they don't have faith, okay? Faith can handle being confused. Another reason this happens is anti-critical reflex. Some seminaries treat higher criticism as dangerous, and they usually don't train students to read certain, manuscripts or apparatuses on how to examine a manuscript. So textual questions is viewed as liberal nitpicking, not as real exegetical concern. And it's not liberal nitpicking. You're not a Bible denier because you're like, wait a minute here. There's a problem. There's a problem. I remember coming upon a problem in 1 John about the three bear witness and the three are one or something along those lines in 1 John. I don't have the verse in front of me. And I was like, wait a minute. There's some major textual issues here, textual variance and some massive disagreement. So I brought my pastor this book dealing with the problem. And he said, what's this? And I said, it deals with the problem in 1 John here. And I don't know if that rendering is correct. And he said, you want me to read this? I'm like, yeah. He tossed it and said, I don't read trash. Whoa. What an amazing response, Pastor. Whoa, you really dug into the controversy there. Anything that challenged his perspective. And I should have known right then Christianity wasn't going to be for me. I should have known Christianity, I'm not going to be accepted in the Christian world, but I'm sorry. I'm going to ask the questions and I'm going to struggle with things. So there's almost no criticisms allowed. And I think another reason this happens is for the convenience of a sermon. Pierced makes for an emotional, evangelistic climax. Like a lion requires awkward explanation. So the rhetorical pull is towards the simpler, the visually powerful reading. Who cares if it's right, but it preaches good. And what's so frustrating is every one of those sermons that will do this, they claim to be defending biblical inerrancy, yet they do so by rejecting the actual Hebrew Bible, the Masoretic text that typically Protestantism itself historically treated as authoritative. So they silently switch to the Greek Septuagint when it suits a Christological reading while still proclaiming loyalty to the original Hebrew. They defend the Bible's accuracy by ignoring what the Bible actually says in Hebrew. And if you look at the landscape of the scholarly landscape, you see the gap. Textual commentaries, and I could name a number of these, all flag as like a lion, not pierced. If you look at all textual commentaries, very scholarly commentaries, they're going to be like a lion, they're not going to go with pierced. If you look at some academic monographs, they at least all discuss the issue in detail. Yet once you get to the pulpit world, these facts rarely surface. The two communities, textual scholarship and preaching, almost never overlap. That deep textual study, that deep textual scholarship, that dealing with the issues, the textual variants. Keep that out of the stinking pulpit, basically, is what Christians want. We don't want that. No. Make it simple. Give me a sermon and get me to the buffet by noon. And if a pastor comes to the pulpit trying to do that, he'll be at the buffet by 11:30 because he got fired, or he'll be door dashing to make some money because no one's going to support him because nobody wants this kind of thing for the most part. And when I say that, I'm overgeneralizing. There are people who do, but I'm just saying, in most churches, you're not going to keep your job. So I said, okay, realistically, AI, what's the issue here? AI said, so if you listen to 100 sermons on Psalm 22:16 from most Christian sources, you're going to probably find this. This is how it breaks it down. Prophetic, literal, pierced sermons, approximately about 95% will treat pierced as original, literal prophecy and ignore the textual debate entirely. That's what AI is predicting, about 95%. It says about 4% will acknowledge the variant, but still will go with pierced. They will briefly note, some say like a lion, but they're going to quickly dismiss it and just say, that's ridiculous and that's dumb, and laugh. And everyone will be like, oh, those idiots who think that, they don't know how to read their Bible. I mean, it's right here in front of me. What's wrong with those people? Go to all that schooling for nothing? Okay, all right. They'll go kind of with that attitude, all right? And then probably about 1% will critically engage with the Hebrew text. They will actually discuss the Masoretic. They will discuss the Septuagint and then the Dead Sea Scrolls. They will talk about evidence. They'll talk about poetic context, and they'll talk about genre. So about 1%. So that means we're going to have to go through a lot to try to find that 1%. Now, here's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to point you to two sermons. I was going to try to make a list, but as I was going through the sermon audio, I'm got like, well, that's clearly, you know which direction these goes. In fact, many of them I clicked on, I'm like, okay, I already know. They're not, I don't even think they're going to even acknowledge, like AI says. Now, AI could be wrong. All right, so this is a good chance for you to prove artificial intelligence wrong. So now, obviously, if you know where to look on sermon audio, you may be able to find the sermons that are going to address the issue. But I think, well, most of those won't be sermons, will they? They're going to either be a seminary class or they're going to be a podcast. They're not going to be a sermon, which then demonstrates, if you really want to dig in, avoid church and don't listen to sermons, go listen to podcasts and lectures. I hate to say that, but I think ultimately that's what it's going to prove. Me addressing it is not from the pulpit. Now, I would address it from the pulpit. If I was at a church, I would all day. I would walk to the pulpit and say, tonight, be prepared to be confused. We're digging into Psalm 22, and it's not going to be like your grandma's church and I wouldn't care. And, well, I probably wouldn't have a church very long, all right? Because that's not what people want. They want to come to church to feel spiritual. They don't want to come to actually learn. So I'm going to point you to two sermons. The first one, these are very simple. The first one is just called Pierced. Well, that already tells you which direction they're going. Pierced. This is from First Reformed Protestant Church, Reverend Andrew Lanning, Lanning. Reverend Andrew Lanning, First Reformed Protestant Church. If you click on play on this, he starts with like a prayer that I think goes on for about 9 minutes. So you're going to have to fast forward. I think there's some singing, and then you'll finally get to the sermon. I don't know how far in you'll have to go, but you'll have to fast forward it. Again, Reverend Andrew Lanning, First Reformed Protestant Church. This is a quite popular one, over 162 downloads and streams. And I think you'll find the sermons that are more, I'm going to call them devotional. I don't call them exegetical, because if they're exegetical, they would deal with all of these problems. So they're not exegetical. They may claim to be exegetical, but they're devotional all day long, right? Because they're not handling the text. But 162, I'm going to say because of that number, probably going to be devotional. And the fact that it says pierced. It doesn't say pierced ? So I'm assuming it's going all in, but you can listen to it on the sermon audio platform. Again, Pierced, Reverend Andrew Lanning, First Reformed Protestant Church. That is sermon number 1. And that's the first one I found when I type in Psalm 22:16. I think it was the first one to pop up. And there you have it. Now, if you do searching, you may want to search Psalm 22:16. I didn't find a lot there. A lot of them dealt with other issues in Psalm 22. You may just want to do Psalm 22, just in general, and pick sermons from there. We may have to do that. But the first one is pierced. The second one is, let me go back to my notes. The second one is, it's taking a second to open, prophecy fulfilled, a walk through Psalm 22. Prophecy fulfilled, a walk through Psalm 22. You already know which direction this one is going. It sees Psalm 22 not as a lament, which it is, not as Hebrew poetry, which it is. It sees it as prophetic literature, which is just insane. It's not prophetic. Give me a break. It's literally poetry. How do we not get the literary genres right? I don't even understand. It's not prophecy, okay? But all right. It may serve as typology. Well, that gets into a whole different subject, okay? But the speaker is Stephen West. The broadcaster is Trinity Baptist Church. Trinity Baptist Church. They say the first 15 minutes, this is in the description, are scripture readings. The sermon begins at 16 minutes. So you may want to fast forward this one to 16 minutes. Stephen West, Trinity Baptist Church. And you can already tell which direction they're going. I couldn't find one that gave me a title that I'm like, oh, this one may deal with all of the controversy. No. I think the only one you're going to find called Psalm 22:16, the Psalm 22:16 problem is going to be me, which is the message I did today. So those are the two. Those are the two. You want them again? There'll be links in my show notes. Hang on. I definitely want to review that one. Pierced by Reverend Andrew Lanning, First Reformed Protestant Church. You'll have to fast forward to the sermon. And the second one is Prophecy Fulfilled, a walk through Psalm 22. Trinity Baptist Church, speaker Stephen West. Both of these have pretty good numbers of downloads, so they're somewhat popular. And these are just the two I found. Now, AI is telling us 95% of these are going to go with, this is prophecy and this proves the Bible. And they're not. And everyone in the pews are just going to think, oh, look. And now they'll get on social media and go, this proves the Bible. And as soon as someone questions it, they'll be like, you atheist, you agnostic, you Satanist. What are you talking about? I've been in church in 15 years and never heard this nonsense. You liberal, you Bible denier. Well, yeah, okay, well, all right. You got me. Okay. I don't know why I went to school for all of this time. It was a waste of time because ultimately it really is. I say it all the time. The pulpit is not the place for seminary. There's no point for going to seminary to stand behind the pulpit because the people sitting in the pew don't want the pulpit. They don't want it to sound like a seminary. In fact, the biggest criticism I ever got in all my ministry was the number one criticism. It feels like a seminary. It feels like a college class. I don't want this. Of course you don't. Of course you don't. I know you don't. You want a nice little sermon with some coffee and donut in the back, and you want to get out by noon, and you want to shake hands and make friends and have fellowships. You don't come for any other reason. I know. But I've always said, no, if we're here to study, we're here to learn. If you're not here for that, then you're not here for me. And so, it's just not the right place for you. And that was my philosophy and it didn't work. I mean, I guess it worked for pretty good. 23 years. I guess in some ways it was successful. In other ways it failed miserably. But, and it's my own fault. I know that. But the point is, I have a strong, obviously, leaning towards the way I think Psalm 22:16 should be handled. It goes against about 95% of sermons. But it would be wrong for me not to point you to the other view. So here today for the Sermon Audio Daily, I'm pointing you to the other sermons. I've given you two. Clearly, those two are going to go against everything I said. Clearly. It's going to be in a completely different universe. So I want you to hear how the church typically handles this. There are more on there, but I only gave you two for now because, this was only supposed to be about 15 minutes long, but you get the idea. But I want you to know why we're doing these two sermons. It's not just, today we're just randomly choosing sermons on Psalm 22:16. No, there's a reason we're doing this. I have a strong disagreement with it. But whether you agree or disagree, every pastor should acknowledge there's a lot of debate and controversy surrounding this thing. And wait, why am I using the Septuagint here? Do I just get to use the Septuagint whenever it works in my favor? And I stay with the Masoretic? So Septuagint in Psalm 22:16, Masoretic in Jeremiah 17:9. That's come on now. But it's the Bible. Like, come on. That just shows you the authority is not the Bible. The authority is the one holding the Bible, determining which reading you want to go with. I know that sounds conspiratorial, if I can get the word right. Not trying to be conspiratorial, but there is a little bit of, I don't like the word conspiratorial, but there is a little bit of, there's more going on. So I know it's not like people think this out, but they don't realize what they're doing. And it just causes you to question the whole thing. So, but you go listen to those two pastors, maybe they will address the issue. Maybe they will. AI does not think they will. I'm questioning them based off the title of the sermons that I think their conclusion is already pretty clear, but maybe they will address and prove why they are going with this conclusion. And maybe they'll deal with the Masoretic, the Dead Sea, the Septuagint. Maybe they'll deal with the literary, the textual context with all the animals around it. Maybe they'll deal with all of it. I don't know. So there you go. Good luck. I don't believe in luck. I'm being a little sarcastic there. I hope it goes well with you, right? I don't know what to say. I was going to say happy listening. It's not going to be happy. I don't even know if it's going to be beneficial. It's going to be listening. So go find those two sermons. They'll be in the show notes, and look on Sermon Audio for other sermons on Psalm 22. And you'll be it gives you a chance to prove AI wrong, right? Go prove AI wrong. AI is pretty dogmatic that, hey, you're going to find, it's going to be 1% or less of people who actually engage. And I think that will be podcasters. I don't think it'll be pastors. And you have to ask yourself, why are podcasters going deeper, dealing with all of these difficult issues, while the pastors just play games? Things that make you go, Everyone have a good night.